probably done well over 50 triathlons from all distances. SOS is the hardest race I have ever done.
It's unlike any other race I've ever heard of. I have no idea how this is going to work out.
It's a lot of pain, but it's definitely the most unique and most challenging race there is in triathlon.
SOS race was most a fundamental change in my life.
The geography of this area can be beautiful, but unforgiving and non-judgmental. It doesn't care who you are. It's not pretty at times. You're taking on some physical challenges that are completely unique in the world of triathlons. For the simple fact is you don't just have one swim and you don't just have one run. This particular geographical setup poses a lot of beautiful but grueling challenges to these triathletes that they don't get in other races.
The Survival of the Shawangunks is an 8-part point-to-point adventure triathlon set in the Shawangunk mountain range of New York. Unlike most races in the sport, it starts with a 30-mile bike followed by 4 runs that are broken up by 3 swims through glacial lakes. The mental game of SOS is one of the things I think that changes you as an athlete. It gives you a lot of time to spend with the course and what's out there. The Shawangunk Mountains are about 1 million years older than the Catskills. They were formed during the 3rd glacial period, so we're going back hundreds of thousands of years. The unique thing about that is those glaciers also cut through, making the 3 lakes that we swim in, but they also scraped out a lot of the area where we get the chance to run. So Don always credits Mother Nature. His idea was basically, how do you connect these amazing features that are out on the land? And he basically said, well, the only way to do that is to be non-traditional.
This is the 33rd year that we're officially putting it on. We did it in 1983 as a fun workout, and word got out about it and people wanted to join us. So in 1984, we made it an official triathlon.
SOS was a secret. It was a hidden gem. My father is a believer in the real, organic, true love of this sport. He was training for the next big thing. In the early 80s, there was this new thing called the Ironman in Hawaii, and at that time, that was organic and grassroots too. So as my dad was training for this big mega feat, he kind of created like the mother of all workouts, and that's how the SOS came about.
I train up in these mountains, and it was just a natural thing for me to go into the lakes in between my runs. And we said, why not formalize it, and there would be something new and challenging in the world of triathlons.
When you look at traditional triathlon racing, distance is one of the challenges. Riding your bike 112 miles, running a marathon, those are all incredibly challenging. To come to a race like SOS and be able to allow your body to make the transitions to the different modalities is what's really hard to comprehend and to figure out. And that's what really makes the SOS such a challenging race. There's a lot of time that you spend by yourself.
The mental fortitude that required on this race is to just be confident that you've trained hard enough to enjoy the surroundings. I mean, it really is survival on the Shawangunks. This will be my 12th SOS, and the last 2 years I've been second. You know, there's a real family feel with the race. I love seeing the people come here every year. As much as I love the racing, I love going to have the meal with them afterwards. I only do one triathlon a year, and this is the one that I do.
There's something special about this race. Everyone is so excited about being together.
I think there's a correlation between anxiety and satisfaction. The more anxiety you had at the start, the more satisfaction you'll have when you go through the final shoot.
5 minutes to start the race, Woohoo! Here we go. 1 minute to the start of the race. 1 minute. Is everyone ready for the race? 4, 3, 2.
The start of the SOS is broken up into 9 waves, each separated by 1 minute to prevent congestion on the 30 miles of country roads. The course remains relatively flat until the last 5 miles, where racers are tasked with an almost 1,300-foot elevation climb. First-time competitor Greg Binns sets the pace early on, taking an early lead for the men, creating a sizable gap between himself and the rest of the field. New York's Michelle Morrow leads for the women, with last year's third-place finisher Ari Spalding not far behind, using her knowledge of the course to her advantage by saving her energy up front. New Paltz native and cyclist Ian McGrew appears strong on the last climb of the bike leg, narrowing the gap that Binns has worked hard to establish. Morrill continues her lead over the last 5-mile climb, setting the pace for Julie Deary, who is just seconds behind. Binns enters the bike transition over 5 minutes ahead of the next athlete, creating a cushion for himself going into the first run. McGrew dismounts his bike in third place, but what these first-timers may not understand is this race is not won or lost on the bike course, and expending too much energy up front could hurt them later in the race. Up next, the climb to Cardiac Hill in the SOS Triathlon. This presentation of the 2018 SOS Triathlon is brought to you by Cliff Bar, Feed Your Adventure, and the New York Triathlete Association. Welcome back to the 2018 SOS Triathlon. As the field leader Greg Binns enters the first run with over a 5-minute lead, racers start to trickle in to meet their crew members at the bike transition. Doghouse Racing's Katie Dodge of Florida ends the bike 16 minutes and 32 seconds behind leader Michelle Morrill. A huge gap, but with 3 swims and 4 runs to go, it's anybody's race.
Go get him, go get him, go get him. Exercise has always been kind of a therapy for me. I think one of the biggest things for these longer distance races is learning to keep yourself going and to find things for your mind to focus on while you're out there for that long. I mean, there's no headphones, there's no entertainment of any sorts. You're just kind of out there, you against the elements, and you have to keep yourself focused for that amount of time. I went from somebody who is probably out 4 or 5 nights a week to somebody who's in bed at 9:30 most nights and up at 4:15 to go to the gym. The sport has profoundly changed my life. About 3 weeks ago, my son Huck was diagnosed with moderate level of autism. So I'm racing to help raise money for Autism Speaks, which was a huge resource for my wife and I. When you first hear that sort of news from a doctor, your whole world gets turned upside down for a little while there. But there's so much out there now to help these kids. In learning about it, we've discovered how hard a lot of people really have it and how much it affects so many people out there that figured we could do our part and try and give back to that program that got us on the right track to getting him help. Kids were something that was never a huge priority for me. I always thought it was going to get in the way of my traveling and whatever else that I thought was important in life, but he's really been the best thing that ever happened.
The bike leg is followed by the transition area, the only place on the course where racers will have a chance to leave any gear behind they don't need and pack what they will need for the runs and swims. Directly out of transition area is a 4-mile run, the second shortest, but home to one of the steepest features known as Cardiac Hill, a monstrous gravel incline reaching a 20% grade that leads to the very first swim, Lake Awasting. Last year's third-place female finisher, Ari Spalding, and first-time racer and United States Air Force pilot Jamie Turner used the 4-mile run to propel themselves into the women's top 5. While Julie Deary, who finished second place off the bike, overcomes Michelle Morrill for first place. And fifth place off the bike, Catherine Tobin maintains her standing going into the first swim. Jody Barton, who grew up in New Paltz but now lives and competes in Anchorage, Alaska, is off to a fast start in 7th place off the bike.
I started to do endurance sports when I was in my early 20s. This year I was able to reach the goals and the times I set for myself, and I finished second in the Alaska State Championship Olympic distance race. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and so I use exercise to help manage my diabetes. So I've kind of used that to get through the past year and focus on this race and train for it and get healthier. I feel like if I can control my blood sugars and manage my diabetes to train and get through the race, then I'm okay to go into the backcountry and go backcountry skiing because I know that I'm able to be in charge of my own body. The challenge of this race, between all the transitions in the running and the swimming, I have an insulin pump and that can't get wet. So right there with that, I knew I was gonna have to tow a buoy behind me for the swim. And my feet can't get blisters on them, so I knew my shoes weren't gonna be able to get wet. So I had to start to plan all of these little kind of hacks around training about how I was gonna get across these lakes. My family tells me that I'm an inspiration, so for them to watch me compete in this race, I think they'll know that I'm safe and that I can handle anything, and even though I have type 1 diabetes, they don't need to worry about me when they can't be right with me. At the finish, I'm definitely gonna cry because I've been training for so long, and to have my family there and to just for them to be so supportive. It'll just be another thing that I've accomplished to let myself know that I am strong and that I can achieve these goals, and that, you know, having a medical condition isn't gonna stop me.
Up next, the first and longest swim of the SOS Triathlon, Lake Awasting. Welcome back to the SOS Triathlon, where racers are just entering the first of 3 swims of the day, Lake Awasting. With the men's leader, Greg Binns, minutes ahead of the pack, SOS vets Billy Edwards, Stefan Judic, and Michael Backer battle with first-time racer Tim Clark to catch him in the 71-degree lake, spanning just over a mile in length.
The role SOS plays in the culture of triathlon is one of tradition. Don Davis is a legend. He's one of those old school warriors. He's part of that 1970s tradition that triathlon was founded in, where you just want to see what you're capable of doing. And so he's cultivated that tradition and maintained it in this race.
How are you gonna keep your feet dry?
I'm not.
Swimming with these shoes?
Yeah.
Triathlon has gotten very corporate over the last decade or so, but SOS Triathlon has remained very pure, which is, I think, one of its standing legacies, is just how unadulterated this race is.
For
many years I've tried to describe the course. You can't describe it because you have to be there to experience it. I think what drew me to SOS wasn't what was missing in other things. I had accomplished a lot of things. So after having the hype of competing in the Ironman, it was kind of, you were let down. You're kind of like, what now? So SOS, just the thrill of what it looked like, kind of drew me into that. I tell my friends every year, this race I do for myself. SOS is the hardest race I have ever done.
A traditional triathlon is swim, bike, run, and that has certain advantages. I chose to create something unique that would be an adventure. Because the lakes were where they were, I thought of myself as just putting the dots together, not realizing the potential that it had to make a great event.
Lake Awasting is the longest swim of the race at 1.1 miles, and after a 30-mile bike and 4-mile run, cramps and muscle confusion notoriously kick in at the exit. One of the unique challenges to this race and something that may surprise many first-time racers.
Strong work. Let's go, Paul. Get it together.
With only one swim and one run under their belts, the racing field remains close. But with only 150 athletes, 2 half-mile swims, and the equivalent of a half marathon yet to come, they'll soon experience a much more isolated race.
It's not a template. It's not a cookie cutter. Most triathlons these days, you have your iron distance, you have your half iron, you have your Olympic, and you have your sprint. The thing about the SOS, because the geography dictates the distance, that it shatters that template.
Up next, the leading females make their way out of Lake Awasting and up to Castle Point in the 2018 SOS Triathlon. Welcome back to the 2018 SOS Triathlon. The second run of the day connects Lake Awasting to Lake Minnewaska with 5.5 miles of carriage roads through the highest elevation on the course, Castle Point. As frontrunner Greg Binns leads the pack out of Lake Awasting, last year's third-place finisher Stefan Judic is in second. Connecticut's Billy Edwards in third, and fourth out of the water, Tim Clark picks up the pace on land, rapidly gaining on his competition.
This is brutal.
New Paltz native and U.S. Air Force triathlete Jamie Turner, who lifeguarded in Lake Awasting as a teenager, uses her familiarity with the lake to her advantage, swimming 8 minutes faster than the other leading women, with Ari Spalding just under 3 minutes behind her.
I was a second place female first year and third place last year. My kids are both competitive swimmers. I want to tell them when they ask me how did you do, I want to say I won or I beat my time from last year.
Castle Point sits just over 2,100 feet from sea level and presents a view that has become iconic to this race.
There's a lot to learn in this sport as far as shaving off minutes here and there, like the transitions. There's a lot more variables than I've ever had to deal with before. The whole taking your shoes off and putting them in your shorts so that you can swim across a lake. It's going to be an experience, and definitely some people have some years of experience on their side, and I think that'll help, but hopefully I can make it work this first time around.
I always get competitive on race day. I think my biggest challenge is gonna be pacing. How do you ride 30 miles and then run for 4.5 and then swim for 1.1? You know, so I don't know how to do that.
My strength is my experience on the course. My strategy at the transitions is just to try to be really quick. I get into the swim transition, get my shoes off, put them in my shorts and just go straight away. Just keep it as simple as possible.
My focus is definitely on the running. It's where I feel most confident. The faster I can get back on the trails, the happier I'll be. Triathlons were never really my thing, but I came last year to cheer on some friends and I thought, oh my God, these people are crazy. Everybody that crosses the finish line, you hear you are a survivor, it kind of resonates with you and it strikes something inside of you that, I don't know if there's a word to describe it, but I wanted to be that, you know, I wanted to be a survivor. I woke up the next morning and I said, I'm gonna do it. And here I am. This is super fun. Mentally and physically, it's definitely going to be more difficult than a traditional triathlon. If you're going to compete at this level, you have to train. So I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning and chug some coffee and be out the door in the dark because for me, you know, that's really the only time I had. Being a mom of 2 girls is super important to me. It teaches them and it shows that if you put your mind to something and you set a goal for yourself, truly you can do anything. And I think it's important for them as children to see that and understand that and watch it, you know, actually happen. My daughter yesterday, she said, you're gonna swim, you're gonna bike, you're gonna run, and you're gonna cross the finish line. And she's 5. She knows that I need to hear that, and she also knows, obviously, that anything is possible.
2 is 10:42:44.
Women's leader Jamie Turner makes her way into Lake Minnewaska 3 minutes in front of now second place Aries Spalding, maintaining her lead going into the longest segment of the day behind the bike, a grueling 8-mile run leading to Lake Mohawk.
This year I did a lot of real swim, run in and out of the lakes, back to back. Whereas in the past, I've done it in a pool setting, a treadmill, but this year I did real lake, real trail running, and tried to be the same length as the race. Because the training was hard and I put a lot into it, I'm expecting to go faster and I don't like to be disappointed, so I think that's my motivation to beat my time and make that training worthwhile.
Feels good. This is the best part of the race. Preparation.
SOS race was the most fundamental change in my life. I was a national caliber swimmer. I was on Olympic trials. In 1993, I was walking on the street of St. Petersburg. I met a friend of mine. He asked me a question if I wanted to do SOS Triathlon. And he told me, it's like if you do this race, it's better than anything else. 2 hours later, we met, and he handled my passport with the visa over there, and I was supposed to go that fall and do triathlon. I came to the United States eventually, but I didn't go that year. It's really fundamental now and special because it was 25 years ago. This is the letter from St. Petersburg City I'm from. This is the invitation saying they were approaching and wants to participate in the race, and don't receive this, and later on he gave it to me.
When you meet Boris, you see a man who's wide-eyed and looking at the opportunity. And to have somebody leave their home country to go and explore a challenge, certainly something as challenging as SOS, says a lot about who the person is. To figure all of that out, all of the logistics, and to make your way to the US and then not have the opportunity to actually race. A lot of people would have said, okay, and they would have gone home, and you'd never hear that story. But he stayed in the country, and all these years later, after becoming a citizen, reaches out and ultimately wants to finish unfinished business from 25 years ago. Not just to race, but he's coming back to finish something that he'd promised to Dawn because he wanted to be part of the SOS family.
I think without the SS, I would not have a visa to come here. I used to be 26 when I was supposed to be here, now I'm 52. Sometimes I'm thinking about my life philosophically. I have 2 lives, and being in the United States is my second life. So SOS gave me another life.
Up next, the half-mile swim across Lake Minnewaska. Welcome back to the SOS Triathlon. The second swim of the day crosses Lake Minnewaska. Today, the half-mile swim in 72-degree water feels like a reprieve from the unseasonably cold day at 53 degrees. For the men, Greg Binns continues to lead the pack by over 5 minutes. Jamie Turner remains just over 3 minutes in front of last year's third-place female Ari Spalding, with Katie Dodge overcoming Michelle Morrill for 5th place. Greg Binns exits the lake minutes ahead of Tim Clark and Stefan Judix, with the longest run of the day ahead of them. Jamie Turner dominates the second swim, putting Ari Spalding 4 minutes behind, with her sights set on a first-place finish.
I've been involved in endurance racing for 5.5 years. I had a physical injury, and the first thing that popped into my head is I wanted to prove to myself that I was the same person. I decided I wanted to be a Marine when I was in the 8th grade. I did a career research report, and I was just so impressed with what the Marines represent, and realized that there's always going to be someone sacrificing to provide freedom for our nation. And from there on, I knew that I wanted to serve that purpose a little bit larger than myself. In 2011, I was serving in Afghanistan. I was on a patrol, and I stepped on an improvised explosive device that led to the amputation of my right leg. When I woke up in the hospital, I was in pain, I couldn't sit up, but honestly the first thought that went through my head was, I'm alive, and I get to go home and I get to see my daughter and my wife, and that was an important first thing to handle. And then the next step was, all right, let's move forward. What is it that I can still do? I think everything, but I'm not sure. There was a gentleman that approached me. He talked about the Challenge Athletes Foundation, and his question to me was, what sport do you want to do? I had recently lost a leg, and that wasn't most people's first words out of their mouth. I needed a physical challenge, and I couldn't think of anything harder at the time, so I was like, that's it. That's gonna be my goal, to finish an Ironman triathlon. And I finished that race, but I've had opportunities to race in a lot of different races. It's just opened my eyes to what is out there. The hardest thing that came into my head was the Ironman. It's not the hardest race out there. When I found out about the SOS, one, it seemed challenging. Sometimes you don't know what you're getting yourself into, but I just felt that this is going to be something special, and I don't want to miss this event.
To come to a race like SOS, you have to have the mentality that whatever the day gives me, I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna embrace it. So when you think about some of the toughest people on the planet, US Marines somewhere in the top of that conversation. You turn him into a triathlete, you got a pretty fierce individual there. He's been a lot of places, he's raced a lot of things. He expects it to be a challenge, he's a Marine. So when it gets tough is when they get even tougher.
My goals with the SOS are, number one, to survive, and a really big one is just to meet some of the other people that do this race and become part of the community, because I feel so welcomed by people. It seems like a family. My biggest challenge with this race is carrying my prosthetic run leg when I swim. I've never had to carry that run leg, and I cannot swim with it on. I plan on taking it apart, so it's 2 pieces, putting it into a waterproof pack, and then wearing that pack as I swim. When everything hurts and every part of me wants to quit, thinking about the people that are maybe cheering me on or the people that are watching, I feel like I need to finish to show them that this is possible and inspire them to reach their goals.
On the Traps Bridge run, Tim Clark is quickly closing the gap on Greg Binns leading up to Godzilla Hill, the longest climb of the day. With less than a minute between the two, it will be a sprint to the last swim of the day, Lake Mohonk. Katie Dodge, who has been steadily gaining on the leaders all day, finally makes her way into the top 3 and is quickly approaching Ari Spalding and Jamie Turner with Catherine Tobin in 4th. Up next, a race to the finish in the 2018 SOS Triathlon. Welcome back to the exciting finish of the SOS Triathlon. After 18 miles of running, 30 miles of biking, and almost 2 miles of swimming, Tim Clark is finally within sight of the day's leader, Greg Binns, with the whole race coming down to the last half-mile swim and 0.7-mile climb to Skytop Tower.
I decided to just swim with my shoes on. I stayed behind him on the swim, knowing that once we get out of the water, he's gonna have to take a second to put his shoes on. I really should be able to get this.
You got me. I knew he was coming and there wasn't much I could do about it. He left his shoes on. I had taken mine off when we got out of the water. Off he went, and I was sitting there putting my shoes on. Sometimes you're not the fastest guy out there.
It's something special. I've been hearing a lot about this race for years by a bunch of my friends, people that I respect a lot in the sport. And now to be a part of that really long-standing tradition is a pretty humbling feeling. I've never raced a race this long that was that close.
Below Skytop Tower, the women's leaders continue to battle across Lake Mohonk. U.S. Air Force triathlete Jamie Turner continues her lead out of Lake Mohonk and up the final climb.
I was a lifeguard back in 1996 in Minnewaska and Awasting, and I remember seeing the triathletes come out there to practice and to train in their Speedos, running around, swimming, biking. I thought they were nuts. I started triathlons about almost 10 years ago. I was fortunate enough to make the Air Force triathlon team, and finally I was given the opportunity to make it in and compete in this event.
Ari Spalding crosses the survivor line in second place, 5 minutes faster than her time last year.
I felt good, and it was a fast year. It wasn't good enough for a win, but I'm happy with the time in the second place. I think my kids are proud of me. It motivates me.
Katie Dodge, Catherine Tobin, and Julie Deary round out the female top 5, while Stefan Judix, Phil Vondra, and Billy Edwards make up the men's leaders after Clark and Binns.
What's made my father so dedicated to keep things so grassroots is love. There's just something about the SOS it's just like coming home. Even if you've never done it, even if it's your first time, you're a part of a family. And the guy who created the race is gonna know who you are. He's gonna know when you did the race, what place you came in. You know, Don Davis will remember what you loved about the race for the rest of your life.
The history of this race reaches far beyond a physical experience for many. It represents a pillar in their past and a motivation for their future.
So I've finished more SOS races than anyone else. Well, my biggest accomplishment in triathlon is probably this race. I won it in 1990. It's like when dinosaurs roamed the earth. It was a long time ago. I've probably done about 300 plus triathlons, but I've always tried to come back and do this race. I can almost see portions of my life in regards to the race. Like, we adopted my daughter 20 years ago today, 2 days before we came here. So I have a picture of me carrying her across the finish line as a 4-month-old. And then there's pictures of her almost every year thereafter. So she's 20 years old now. Equipment's changed a lot. Our notions of training and nutrition has changed a lot. But the kind of the core motivation thing, that just hasn't changed.
I feel like I'm giving back to an event that gave me so much. The soup is still made by the same guy in my kitchen. There's a lot of tradition there. Don Davis took me under his wing like he does everybody. And before I knew it, he was taking me to my first triathlon. It gave me an alternative lifestyle that I became very passionate about. And the race will always be a part of my life.
The volunteers and the race committee, I mean, they make you feel part of the family. It's like you're seeing old friends. I've competed in races with thousands, and you don't see kind of the detail that these guys really make sure you feel.
There you go. Good job, good job. Got it.
I'm really amazed at the dedication people have towards the race and the variety of people. We have people who are in their 80s, and we have young kids who volunteer. And they all seem to like helping, and they enjoy being part of the SOS family.
Everyone in New Paltz knows about the SOS. I love when people say thank you and really mean it. I love the fact that they know that we're here for them to help. I find it inspirational that they work so hard, that the racers run and swim and bike almost every single day of their lives to get ready for this race, and therefore I try to do things like that in my life. It may not be in sports, but I do look at the way they work hard at something. You're all set. Have a wonderful race. I always say that I started out 35 years ago as a young woman numbering the young men. Now I'm very happy to number the men between 60 and 70 or even older, and they're my group now. Don and Darlene are very family oriented. They're very close to their friends. They want this race to showcase New Paltz. They want everyone to have a good time, and people do.
Up next, the finale of the 2018 SOS Triathlon. This presentation of the SOS Triathlon is brought to you by Mohawk Mountain House and the Challenged Athletes Foundation. The finish of the SOS Triathlon represents overcoming obstacles, We don't call this a finish line, it's called a survivor line. And that's because this is more than a race. It's proving to yourself that your capabilities know no bounds. And in many respects, there is nothing more important than that. Crossing through this threshold on Skytop Tower turns this notion into something tangible that you'll hold on to for the rest of your life.
I try and think of people who would love to be able to be out there and feeling that pain and going through that suffering and can't do it. So even though it hurts, try and put myself in somebody's shoes who would give anything to be in that spot. Fundraising for Autism Speaks, I have quite a few people who have donated to the charity, and I want to have them know that I'm out there giving it my best and trying to win.
SOS Triathlon stacks up with the most challenging things that I've done. When I was laying in the hospital bed right after I lost my leg, I couldn't imagine the emotions that I'm feeling right now. If you set goals and you just don't quit, you'll get there. I hope everyone makes it to the top of this hill someday.
You can see the tower from multiple places on the course, and I just kept looking at it. I'm coming for you, I'm coming for you. Just having family and friends up here, you want to show up.
It's much more harder than I thought. It's very enjoyable and beautiful race and amazing to be part of this again. So I love it and it was a lot of fun.
I had a big unexpected challenge come up last night. My continuous glucose monitor failed. Today I had to kind of go off of feel. I just had to mentally calm down and know that I could still finish the race, and it was just a small setback and that I would be fine. Crossing the survivor line meant to me that I am a survivor, You don't have to have a setback because you have something going on that limits your expectations of yourself. You can work hard and still do anything you put your mind to it.
New York's Adam Cohen, who lost his shoe in the first swim, approaches Skytop after 7 hours and 54 minutes. Limping his way across the final steps over 3 hours after the day's leaders, running barefoot over 13 miles on jagged gravel trails.
He was offered a shoe from various volunteers, size 9. He thought that if he took that shoe, it would be against the spirit of the SOS. That's heart. That is heart. It's things like that illustrate the respect that everyone has for this event. People, when they get to that survivor line at that Skytop, they want to feel that they accomplished something.
I never considered not finishing. Kids are here and you can't teach them to quit, so it never crossed my mind, to be honest. It's all gravel, there's no grass on the side, so it feels like you're being sucked by needles. But I have to say, the people in this race are incredible. I mean, there's not a single person who didn't pass me that said something nice, encouraging. Volunteers were incredible.
Here we go! You are a rock star! Well You're about to become a legend, you know that.
Yeah. Like Bobby said, if you're not first, you're last. So today I'm finally last, but I'm really happy.
All the people that have survived the SOS share a camaraderie. It's not glitzy, it's not glamorous. You're talking 19 miles of running through 4 different segments. You're summiting a mountain, you're swimming through 3 different lakes, you're carrying your shoes. Beyond the training, and even beyond the community interaction, I think there's a general sense that people that are among this group have a passion for life.
Here's what 12% feels like. I love it. Warm up for Godzilla.
I know my father wants to be super healthy because he loves his life. He loves my mom. He loves his family. He loves his community. And that's what drives him to achieve these insane goals that he overcomes. And I think that goes to say for a lot of people in this community. It's this individual quest for the most fulfilling life so that they can share with the people that they love.
For more information and to stay in touch with the SOS community all year, follow us on Facebook and Instagram.